processes are not just about policies and SOPs, but it's also about common sense, equal opportunity, equal pay. IQ as a standalone skill set is no longer relevant. We kind of try to start negating the plus points of the technology with headcount reduction. And we have also seen cases where there has been hallucinations. It's a different lens altogether. Our organizations used to be more hierarchy driven. The same culture would not thrive in today's environment. Business acumen is definitely going to be a key role for HR leaders to play. I usually steer away from giving advices. Do not become a robot yourself.
Welcome to ValueMatrix.tv, where we bring unfiltered voices and strategic thinking to build better workplaces. I'm Royden Surejo, and joining me today is Richa Verma Agrawal, Head of People Experience and Senior Director HR at Flipkart. With over 26 years of experience, Richa has journeyed from global service delivery in IT services to becoming a powerhouse in the HR, shared services, transformation, and HR tech over the last 2 decades. She brings deep functional expertise across the entire hire to retire spectrum. Her leadership has also earned her prestigious recognitions, including the Exceptional Employee Experience Leader and Exceptional Employee Experience for a Team at the ET HR World Employee Experience Awards 2024, plus the silver winner for excellence in HR digital transformation at the ET Human Capital Awards 2025. Richa, welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much, Royden. Thank you for having me on.
Great. I think the best place to start off in this conversation right now is the flavor of, let's say, what is going to be the flavor of the decade, which is AI in HR and AI everywhere, essentially. Now, we all know that the use of AI is great when it comes to automating process-driven tasks, and especially even in HR and recruiting, like screening resumes, maybe even onboarding experiences can be done via AI. But I just want to understand, like beyond this automation, how do you see AI evolving HR professionals from maybe mere gatekeepers to talent advisors?
So I think yes, you've kind of picked up the most hot topic of the last 4 5 years, which is AI. I think when we look at the top talent definition, currently the organizations are grappling with multifaceted challenges. Right, the technology is changing at a lightning speed. We are dealing with multi-generational customers, so their needs are all over the place, and then also there are micro and macro conditions like the world economics, which are also influencing businesses and business decisions in a significant way. And I think in order to be able to manage all of these challenges and be not only what is the backbone is the workforce of any organization. So clearly, when it comes to top talent identification, there has been a sea change that I have noticed over the last decade or so, particularly. And post pandemic, there was a situation when we were dealing with VUCA and Barney environment. And I think the top skills at that point in time, which were emerging, were skills like agility and resilience. I think now the agility is pretty much segueing into learning agility because the technology is moving so fast, the environmental conditions or the ecosystem of an organization is changing so fast that we need people who can learn, unlearn, and then learn again in all these changing environments. So, the clear shift is from agility to learning agility. Also, I think IQ as a standalone skill set is no longer relevant in the absence of AQ, which is again the adaptability quotient. And it's more about how quickly you can adapt and adopt to the changing environment. And it's just not restricted to technology, but also to the business priorities of the organization or to the shareholders' expectations or the customer requirements, right? Another thing which is coming together is also that earlier, the top talent identification was more along the lines of niche skills or more on the lines of a particular domain expertise. But now that also is shifting to a balanced combination of not only the niche skills or the expertise in your domain, but it needs to be supplemented with the human touch, the personal touch, the business acumen that you're dealing with. It's also about the agility again. And so it's human, technical, domain, and then the agility requirements, which are coming together as a combined force when we are looking at the top skills which are needed. So I think all of these packaged together are redefining the way we are identifying our top talent in the organization. organization.
One thing I think many people, or when you're using AI tools, regard that AI is generally sort of unbiased. But at the same time, I do feel that some bias safeguards are needed. So, in your experience or in your opinion, what sort of practical safeguards have proven most effective against when you're integrating AI into the hiring and people acquisition process?
Let me explain this with a recent experience that I've had. I recently explored an AI powered ATS system, recruitment system. Now, usually the recruitment systems that we come across are offering automated processes when it comes to CV parsing or candidate screening, scheduling interviews, even notating the feedbacks of the interview panel, or providing a summary that enables decision making. I think this tool that I experienced, it was a little ahead in its game, where it was bases the responses of the candidate to the various interview questions based on the feedback coming from the interview panel, based on some of the strengths and developmental areas that the candidate may have cited. It kind of consolidates and summarizes all of this into a beautiful learning plan. So, which is not only facilitating the recruitment decision of whether to go ahead with that candidate or not, but also it kind of, once the candidate selection or decision is made, it also provides, the food for preparing a learning plan or a training plan and the developmental area for the candidate quite early on. Otherwise,
Yeah.
usually any organization takes about 60 to 90 days or a little
Yeah.
more to understand what could be the individual development needs are. But all this is provided quite early on, and I think that's really helpful. However, I think to your earlier point of bias, I think a lot of feed that goes into AI tools is also coming from all of us. It's coming from the
Yeah.
human community around. And we know that human feed cannot be ridden off the personal biases or perceptions or your own intellect judgments, right? And so there are going to be biases. We have also seen cases where there has been hallucinations that has come up as well. To kind of arrest that kind of a situation, while the transactional routine jobs can be automated through AI, I think there has to be a human in the loop, a human in the scope,
Mm.
so that there can be some checkpoints, there can be some guardrails beyond what the automated system is doing. And I say this, someone coming from a very deep expertise in HR operations. A lot of times, I say that processes are not just about policies and SOPs or the standard operating procedures, but it's also about common sense. So I think the human in the loop is definitely an increasing component. There can be other guardrails to say how much your process automation is really talking to your internal policies and
Mm.
to the statutory requirements. There can be more validations that can be built in, which again can be automated, but I think it's more about understanding what is the end goal that you want to achieve, what are some of the failure modes that can happen in
Yeah.
the process of automation, and then defining some kind of guardrails or governance mechanisms for all those failure modes.
I think you made some really good points over there. Like you said, while AI is helping getting a better understanding of the candidate well before they even come on board, candidates themselves are also heavily using AI to sort of
Yeah,
tailor their CVs based on the JDs, right?
yeah.
So that also brings us to the trust issue when you look at AI enhanced data. So how do you see like maybe the candidate trust evolving as AI reshapes resumes and profiles and even HR data?
Yeah, I was part of a conference panel very recently, and I think somebody kind of cracked the joke that the CVs are being written with the help of AI. The system which is parsing the CVs is AI powered. In some of the cases, the initial screening of the candidates or the initial candidate reviews and interviews are also done by AI. When everything is so AI, how to kind
Yeah.
of ensure that it's not a gamed plan end to end, and it's more truthful and it's more realistic. I have seen organizations bringing in different aspects. For example, there is mandatorily in person interview rounds which are being mandated as a part of the recruitment process. The CVs can only describe so much as to
Yeah.
what a particular candidate must have done. But when you kind of give them real time scenarios
Mhm.
and try to assess their thinking capability, or how what is their crisis management mode, I think those are some of the realistic examples that can also help us to say whether the candidate is a real good fit and there's more truthness in the whole process. And I think sometimes just going to the basics, which is not just going by what is written in the CV, but truly assessing the candidate through unprecedented questions. A lot of tools are now available which can prepare you for interview rounds, because there's a category or a list of 70 odd questions that the interviewers mostly end up asking. So people can really cook up stories there. But I have also seen some recruitment teams, especially when it is middle to senior management or senior leadership interviewing process, where they invite the candidates to pitch an idea
Yeah.
or to present something that they may have done, and it's all done in person, I think. So those are the situations which can really help control
Yeah.
the biases and the falseness. But I think it's more about trying to understand the candidate in all its genuine persona, rather than just the AI persona.
True. While we're on the subject of AI and HR, just one last sort of question that I have is, obviously there is fear that there will be job loss and roles will be replaced by a tool essentially. How much truth is there to that sort of fear factor right now? And do you see an eventuality, maybe 5 years down the line, something like this does taking place in most organizations?
It's not AI which is replacing jobs for people. I think it's the mindset with which organizations adopt AI or adopt any technology advancement. It's a general CXO phenomenon, probably, which is there, where they are trying to justify the huge investment in AI tools and applications with headcount efficiencies or resource reduction, workforce reduction. And I think that's where the fear factor is creeping in. And it's unfortunate because 13, 14, 15 years ago, when RPA was very, very nascent in the industry and became a hot topic like AI, I was given to understand by the people who were selling RPA technology to say that in the next 10 years, probably 75% of the jobs will not exist. And the 10 years have happened and the jobs have only multiplied. I think it's a very sad situation where we kind of, instead of encouraging our employees to adopt these tools for increased efficiency in their work so that they can take out some time for their personal development or to focus on their well being, I think we kind of try to start negating the plus points of the technology with headcount reduction. It's just a very insecure way of introducing technology. The fear factor is not completely untrue, unfortunately. It's just how some of the organizations are adopting the technology. It just depends on that.
Okay, I think those are some great points, Richa. I think let's maybe move towards the future of workforce and the Gen Zs that are coming into the play.
Right.
So I just want to get your thoughts on the Gen Z retention. I know you wrote about this some time ago, a few months ago, about the eight eyes. Drawing from that, in your opinion, how do you think organizations should sort of rethink, workforce planning to attract and retain Gen Zs, and at the same time, while balancing the multi-generation teams?
So I think again, Gen Zs are another hot topic beyond AI, and I think we really need to understand the Gen Z community as well. The attributes which are defined for a Gen Z is probably not the same across. So the Gen Z, again, the attributes can be very different within this generation, depending on their socio-economic environment, depending on their backgrounds, depending on their city and place of location. So probably a Gen Z in a tier 3 city may not act, behave, or expect things the same way as a tier 1 city, just to cite as an example. So I think there's a broad spectrum within the Gen Z segment also that needs to be kind of reviewed in order to kind of get the true benefits of how we want to manage this talent pool. Overall, the overarching themes where we know that they need to have, a voice for themselves. They want to feel that they are contributing directly to an organization's priorities. All of those are something which are inherent in the previous organizations. I am a Gen X, but I know that even I want to have a voice at the table. I want to feel more, my career becomes more meaningful and fruitful if, I know I'm contributing directly to the organization's success. Some of these things have been there across different organizations. The only difference lies in that is that probably the Gen X, Gen Y were not so vocal about it,
Yeah.
whereas this generation is. Another overarching theme is more about their entitlement, and some of the entitlement is not really something that can be frowned upon. I think who doesn't want the right of equal opportunity,
Yeah.
equal success, equal pay? I think again these are some needs which you and I would have realized in our respective generations, but just that this team, again, this generation is more vocal about it. The requirements for talent attraction and management, there are common themes across different generations, and I think those are the ones that we need to maximize, because then there will be very less conflicting points even if you're working in a multi-generational environment. But there are other things that this generation is also all about fanfare, all about social media presence, and I think that's where working in an archaical way of attracting this talent through job adverts or through placement consultants is not going to be sufficient. It's more about building the employer brand through social media presence also. That's one way of giving an early glimpse of the culture and the DNA or the workspace that you have in an organization to the potential candidates in this generation. When it comes to retention, the whole aspect of employee benefits, employee compensation is also
Hmm.
undergoing a change. I know in one of my previous assignments, I was given the task of relooking at the benefits for the entire Asia Pacific region. And when I was doing some kind of market intelligence gathering, we realized that while it may not be true for India at that point in time, there were other Asian countries which were already looking at being pet parents and what kind of benefits pet parents can get. Now it
Right.
is kind of catching up in India also.
Yeah.
Say 5 to 6 years ago, it was not so prevalent in India, but yeah, some of the Asian countries were already making headway in that. I think there were other areas where employee benefits were being relooked at from what is more meaningful for the employees,
Hmm.
and not really what the market is offering or what is the fashion, right? So I think those are the areas where we need to start looking at, and a good way to do a dipstick is to probably survey or get the inputs from this generation itself as to what are their requirements. That's where I see more of a differentiation between the previous generations and this generation,
Hmm.
where they want to look into how they want to invest their earnings and savings into
Yeah.
themselves rather than into the assets that we used to build earlier on. So I think accordingly, the employee benefits, employee well-being programs need to be retailored to suit their
Right.
requirements.
Right. Also, Richa, you mentioned you talked about culture when you're hiring, right? It's also important to get the right culture fit, but at the same time, you also want to get somebody from diverse backgrounds, so maybe the culture evolves and the organization and gets better. So, if we were to measure, culture fit versus culture add. How would you practically balance both these, at the same time while making sure that ethos of the and the values of the company stay intact?
When it comes to culture, there are some foundational aspects to culture which are non-compromisable, non-tolerance zones, and I think that's where the culture fit would come into the play. So for example, if we want to consider as integrity being a core value for the organization, again that's a zero tolerance in most of the organizations. It's a foundational aspect, right? That's where the culture fit aspect would be amplified. But culture add is more about the backgrounds and the expectations that the talent is coming with, and because of that, how we see a differentiation in the culture. Another example could be that our organizations used to be more hierarchy driven, more
Yeah.
bureaucratic earlier. The same culture would not thrive in today's environment, and so I think it's more about how you can be on the go with the culture as well. So I think there has to be a perfect symphony between the two. You need to define aspects which you cannot negotiate with, and that becomes your core foundational culture fit. And then there are aspects because of the agility in the business requirements, agility in the macro environment which is needed. You want to kind of adapt to different cultures and make it a little more open environment to be
Right.
able to listen to your employees and adapt yourself accordingly.
So you've done a lot of digital HR transformations is some of
Yeah,
your core expertise, right? So
yeah.
when we are looking at today's the workplace and sort of the concept of work, I think is evolving, especially with AI and all this tech coming in, and the word work itself is sort of being redefined. So how do you envision sort of the future of work in the next decade? And you can maybe draw parallels to your current role at Flipkart, with the high growth in the e-commerce environment, especially.
10 years is a very distant time, Rod, and we are changing so fast. Probably, in the near future, next, 1 to 3 years time frame, I think the organizations are going to be more fluid rather than having a very rigid structure. Workforce planning in itself needs to be extremely agile. It's extremely fluid as well because of all the changes that we've talked about previously. The changing expectations, from the business and changing expectations of, our customers. I see that, fluidity in the overall workforce architecture will be a key factor for success of any organization. Again, it has to be a combination of hybrid, in office, remote. When we look at it, the workforce categorization again needs to be a little more agile in the sense that, we need to work with different categories of workforce. Not everybody is quite tempted towards having a full-time job. How much we are flexible and have a scope of part-time opportunities, flexible opportunities, freelancing opportunities, consultant opportunities. How we are going to bring all of these aspects together is what is going to define the success of the organization. So in every aspect, whether it is the hierarchy or the workforce constitution or even our internal ways of working, right? No longer it is more about having bureaucratic processes or multiple layers of approvals and
Yeah.
reviews to be done. How quickly we are able to decide, and all of that quick decision is powered by the intuitive systems and information that we really have at our fingertips right now. So all of that is really going to play a significant role in reshaping the workforce and the workspace.
Yeah, I think that's very well put, Richa. Just one final question before we wrap up. If you had to give sort of one advice to budding HR leaders who may be just starting out today, considering how the HR space is evolving, what would that be for them to really thrive and be relevant even like 5 years from now?
I usually rather steer away from giving advices because nobody is perfect, and I'm also on my own learning journey. But I think probably I can share some practices which worked for me and if it works for others. One is, the core aspect of an organization is the business, right? So having that business acumen and not just the here and now about the business, but what the business can be in the coming years and what is the potential of the business or what are the challenges of the business, how we can resolve some of the conflicts and the challenges that the business is facing. Overall, the end-to-end business acumen is no longer the job of just business leaders. It is
Yeah.
essential for HR leaders also. Business acumen is definitely going to be a key role for HR leaders to play, a key skill set in the area where we are surrounded with technology. There's so much of passion towards AI and bots. Do not become a robot yourself. Having that human element, and I always say this when we have a word like human resource, while we kind of try to concentrate a lot more on the resourcing part of it, the first word is human. So, being
Yeah.
human will definitely remain at its core. And more so now because emotional aspect of the employees is also kind of undergoing a whirlpool right now because
Yeah.
of all the changes around them, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is that in order to be able to advocate agility and resilience and learning to others, you need to imbibe those skill sets in yourself. So learning has to be an ongoing process, and it's not just for HR leaders, but who aspires to have a long time career and also have a successful one at that, right? So I think learning has to be an ongoing process always.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Richa. Or thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. It was lovely talking to you.
Likewise, complete pleasure.
To our viewers and listeners, if you're passionate about modernizing, hiring, and building better teams, head over to valuematrix.tv for more great content. Also, don't forget to follow us on social and subscribe to our podcast. Until next time, thank you for tuning in to valuematrix.tv, where we bring you the future of work, one insightful conversation at a time. Take care.